The cold wind of Wyoming blew hard across the dusty street as My Lin tightened the last button on a grey wool dress she had mended. Her fingers were raw from sewing. The tiny room behind the mercantile was her only world, and her needle was the only thing she could control in a town where a Chinese woman was treated like a shadow. She was 28, a widow, and the people of this town had already decided her life for her. In their eyes, she was just the Chinese widow, nothing more. The bell above her shop door rang, and My Lin's shoulders tensed. She knew that heavy step. Mr. Blackwood filled the doorway like a storm cloud, smelling of tobacco and power. He owned the mercantile, the bank, and half the county, and he wanted her. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Lin," he said, stepping closer than any decent man should. My Lin kept her eyes down on the sleeve she was mending. "I am working, sir." "That is fine work," he said, but he wasn't looking at the dress. He was looking at her. Such delicate hands should not struggle in a place like this. Her stomach twisted. "The dress is for Mrs. Albright." "I must finish it today," Blackwood chuckled. "She will wear it to church and pray for your soul." All in one breath he pushed aside a bolt of cloth, leaning closer. "I have asked you twice now, My. A woman alone is not safe. You need a husband. You need protection." "I am managing," she said. Her voice was steady, but inside she was shaking. "Are you?" Blackwood asked, his tone turning colder. "I hear young Wei is doing good work at my warehouse." "Quick, boy. But winter is coming. Jobs get thin." My Lin's needle froze. She looked up at him. Wei was her 17-year-old brother. He was all she had left. Blackwood smirked. "You do your duty, My, and I will do mine. I will not be your wife," she whispered. The smile slid from his face. Something cruel took its place. He reached out and tucked a stray curl of her silken black hair behind her ear. She jerked away. "Pennies from mending shirts won't save you," he said. "Your husband's debts are heavy. They belong to my bank. Your house by the creek belongs to my bank. Your brother's job is tied to my goodwill." He walked to the door and pulled it open, letting coal dust spill inside. "I will expect you for dinner Saturday," he said. "We will discuss the wedding." He left her shaking, staring at the empty doorway. That night, in the small, leaning house she shared with Wei, My Lin told him everything. Wei looked pale, almost sick. "You told him no," he said. "I told him no again," she whispered. "Today he talked about your job, our home." Wei swore under his breath. "We can't stay, My. We have to run. He will find us," she said. "He owns everything." They ate in silence. The stew tasted like sorrow. Wei slept, but My Lin stayed awake, staring at the dying fire. She could not marry Blackwood. She could not sell herself to save her brother. But if she refused, they would lose everything. The next morning, she went to the mercantile for thread. She kept her head low, praying not to see him. But in the back office, she heard Blackwood's voice through the door. "She is being difficult," he said. "But if she will not come willingly, then the bank will foreclose on Monday. Wei will lose his job by noon. Hunger will bring her to me." My Lin froze. The spool of thread dropped from her hand and rolled across the floor. "My property." She slipped out the side door. Her breath came fast as she ran home. There was only one thought in her mind. Run. She packed bread, cheese, her sewing kit, a quilt, and her late husband's old revolver. She took the few dollars she had saved in a tin. She saddled her mare, Petal, and pinned a note for Wei to the door. "I will find work. Blackwood cannot use me against you if I am gone. Go to the mission in Cheyenne. I will find you. I love you." And then she rode. She did not look back. 2 days later she fought through deep snow in the mountains. Nearly blind from cold, she followed nothing but hope, praying the memory of a name was enough. Gideon Cole, the rancher who had saved her once. The quiet man with storm-colored eyes. The man she had never forgotten. The night she found his cabin, she collapsed in the snow 20 yards from the door. She tried to crawl. She could not. She whispered, "Please." But the wind stole the word. The door opened. A tall figure stepped into the storm holding a rifle. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he came forward, grabbed her coat, and dragged her inside. She gasped as warmth hit her frozen skin. He kicked the revolver from her hand. He looked down at her with cold grey-blue eyes she remembered from the stagecoach for years ago. "My Lynn," he said. It was not a question. He knelt beside her, his voice low and rough. "You are freezing to death," she tried to speak. "Blackwood." "Way, please." Gideon stood, tossed a heavy blanket over her, and turned to the fire. "I do not know who Blackwood is," he said. "And I do not want to know." My Lynn shivered under the blanket, her body shaking violently, her hope barely holding. She had made it to him, but he was not the man she remembered. He was hardened, scarred, and colder than the winter outside. She had run to the only man who once saved her life, but she did not know yet if he would save her this time. What if the only safe place left in the world was inside a cabin with a man who did not want you there? My Lynn woke slowly, her bones aching from the cold she had survived. She lay on a cot covered in thick furs, the warmth of the fire touching her skin. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she saw him. Gideon Cole sat at a small table in the dim light, cleaning his rifle. His movements were steady, controlled, and distant. His face was rough with a beard, and a jagged white scar ran from his temple to his jaw. It changed him. It made him look older, haunted, and carved from the same stone as the mountain outside. "You are in my bed," he said without looking at her. "I expect you will be out of it by morning." My Lynn pushed herself up, her muscles trembling. "Thank you. You saved my life. I dragged you out of the snow," he said, snapping a metal piece into place. "The weather saved you, not me." Her heart sank. This was not the quiet protector she remembered. This man was shut tight behind walls built of loss and silence. She tried again. "I needed help. A man named Blackwood." "I do not want to know." Gideon stood and walked away from her, his tall frame blocking the firelight. "I live up here because I do not want company or trouble." "You brought both." Her hands trembled. "I cannot go back." "You will," Gideon said. "When the storm breaks." 2 days, no more." She stared at him. "He will kill me if I go back." "That is not my concern." But my Lynn was stronger than he expected. She stood on shaking legs, walking to the far wall where water dripped through a loose log. "Your roof is leaking. The chinking is failing." "I can fix it." He didn't turn. She pointed to his coat thrown over a wooden peg, its sleeve torn wide open. "Your coat needs stitching." "I can fix that, too." Gideon looked at her then, really looked. She was pale, bruised by cold, barely able to stand, yet ready to work. He shook his head. "I do not need a seamstress and I cannot go back to Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice cracking. "He will find me. He will take me." The fear in her voice pierced something in him. He turned away quickly, hiding the struggle on his face. The wind screamed outside. Snow piled higher on the window. The mountain trapped them together whether they wanted it or not. "Fine," Gideon said at last. "You cook, you mend. You stay out of my way." And just like that, a fragile bargain was made. The storm did not break. 2 days passed, then another, then a week. Snow climbed up the cabin walls, turning the world white. Gideon rigged a rope from the cabin to the barn so he wouldn't get lost walking the 20 yards. Inside, the air was tense. He hunted during the brief lulls, returning with little more than frozen hands and the smell of pine smoke. She cooked what little they had. She mended his torn coat, his socks, his shirts. Each stitch was a plea. "Please let me stay." He spoke little. She spoke little. The silence pressed on them like the snow outside. One night, my Lynn dared to speak. "My husband, he was not kind," she said quietly, her hands working on a torn sleeve. He liked the saloon more than he liked his marriage. He left debts. Blackwood bought those debts. Gideon didn't look up, but he listened. He threatened my brother, she whispered. Way is just 17. He will lose his job. The bank will take our home. Gideon's jaw tightened. Towns are full of men like Blackwood. My Lynn hugged herself, staring into the fire. I had nowhere else to go. I remembered you. He looked at her for a moment, only a moment, then looked away quickly. 2 days later, he came home injured. Blood soaked the sleeve of his coat. He held his arm against his chest, his face pale. A wolf caught in a trap, he said tersely. It was not dead. My Lynn jumped from her chair. Sit down. Let me see. He tried to wave her off, but the pain forced him into the chair. She poured whiskey over the wound, and Gideon inhaled sharply, but he did not make a sound. This will hurt, she warned, threading a needle. Just do it. She stitched his flesh carefully, her fingers nimble, even as her own hand shook from fear and cold. His breath hitched once, just once, but he stayed still, watching her face inches from his. She smelled clean like soap and wood smoke, and her touch was soft, too soft. When she finished, she brushed a stray lock of hair from her face. Her fingers grazed his skin. The touch was innocent, but it was enough to break the dam inside him. Their eyes met. The storm outside faded. The crackle of the fire disappeared. It was just her breath and his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Gideon leaned forward and kissed her. It was wild, desperate, a starving man finding food. She pulled him closer, her hand fisting his shirt. His mouth traveled to her neck. She gasped, her pulse racing, and then he froze. He ripped himself away from her as if burned. His chest heaved. His hands trembled. No, he rasped, backing away. I cannot. I will not. Gideon, you are scared. You are alone and he broke off, shaking his head. I will not be like him. He grabbed his coat and walked straight out into the freezing night, the door slamming behind him. Clara sat there in the firelight, trembling. The warmth of the kiss still burned on her lips, but the cold of his rejection crushed her. She curled on the cot and cried softly, believing she had ruined everything. Gideon stayed in the barn all night, sitting in the dark, drinking from an old bottle, trying to drown the desire he feared made him dangerous. He did not sleep. The next morning, he returned, smelling of whiskey and snow. He did not look at her. He did not speak. Days passed in silence so heavy it felt like another storm. Supplies dwindled. Hunger grew. Fear grew. On the 4th day, Gideon's frustration exploded, the silence snapping like dry wood. This is not enough food, he said harshly. You cannot stay. When the storm breaks, you leave. I cannot, my Lynn whispered. I do not care. His eyes flashed with anger, but underneath it was fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of becoming like Blackwood. What did you do to make him hunt you this far? What does he want so badly? My Lynn felt her heart break all over again. She lifted her head and whispered the truth. He wants me because of a contract, she said. A forged one. What contract? Gideon asked. The one that says I am the payment, she whispered, shaking. Me. He claims I belong to him. Gideon went still. He stared at her, confusion turning into horror. Then rage. Pure burning rage. He slammed his fist into the log wall so hard the tins on the shelf rattled. No, he said, breathing hard. No man owns another. It was a vow, a promise, a fire. My Lynn felt tears fall, but this time they were not from fear. Something inside her loosened, a knot that had been choking her for months. 2 days later, as the storm finally calmed, a single rider appeared in the canyon. A trapper tossed a sealed letter into the snow and rode away. Gideon brought it inside. My Lynn broke the seal with shaking hands. Blackwood's handwriting was thick and cruel. The storm has cleared. I am coming to collect what is mine. Expect me by the end of the week. My Lynn's breath stopped. He knows where I am, she whispered. She packed her few things in a frenzy. "I have to go, Gideon, please let me go." "He will kill you." Gideon grabbed her shoulders firmly, his voice low and steady. "I am not sending you away." She stared at him, tears falling. "But he will." "No," Gideon said. "This is where it ends." He looked toward the door, his jaw set with the steel of a man who had lost too much already. "He is not taking you." The old fear, the old pain, the old loneliness fell away. What remained between them was something raw and powerful. For the first time, Mylin believed she might survive this. Maybe not because she was strong, but because she was no longer alone. What would you do if the man who wanted to save you had to risk everything, even his life, to keep you free? The cabin was no longer just shelter. It became a fortress. Gideon worked with sharp focus, reinforcing the door with metal bands from an old wagon wheel and boarding up the window until only a thin gap remained for Mylin's rifle. Mylin worked beside him, her hand steady now, not trembling, not afraid. They were partners, a team, ready for the fight neither had chosen, but both refused to run from. Snow fell heavy outside, thick and white, hiding the world. The cabin glowed warm with firelight. But inside their hearts, something stronger was burning. "You stand at the front window," Gideon said. "I'll take the door." Mylin nodded. "I won't let anyone hurt us." Gideon paused. He looked at her. Really looked at her. This was not the scared widow who had collapsed in the snow. This was a woman who had lived through storms worse than winter. She had lived through men like Blackwood. Now she stood with a rifle in her hands. He felt something deep and aching rise in him, a kind of awe, a kind of love. But there was no time to speak it. Because that night, the sound they had been waiting for came. Slow, heavy footsteps in deep snow. Horses, men. A voice booming through the white darkness. "Cole. I know you're inside. Send out what belongs to me." Blackwood. Mylin gripped the rifle, her breathing tight. Gideon's face turned to stone. "She doesn't belong to you." Gideon shouted back. Blackwood laughed, a low, ugly sound. "Everything in this valley belongs to me, and she is the last debt I intend to collect." Another man rode forward with a torch. "Burn the barn," Blackwood ordered. "Smoke them out." "Take what's mine." "No," Mylin cried. She rushed forward, but Gideon grabbed her arm. Then everything happened fast. Gideon burst out the door, shotgun raised. He fired a warning shot into the air. Snow exploded around the riders. Horses bucked. One man fell, clutching his leg. Gunfire crackled back at the cabin. Bullets punched holes into the logs. Gideon dove behind the woodpile. Mylin dropped to her knees at the window slit, lifting the rifle with shaking hands. She spotted a man slipping to the side, leveling his gun at Gideon from behind. Her breath froze. "Breathe out. Squeeze." She fired. The man fell into the snow. Her hand shook so badly she nearly dropped the rifle. She had never taken a life before, but she had saved Gideon's. The barn caught fire. The flames rose fast, spreading through the dry hay. Horses screamed inside. He blasted out into the snow. Blackwood, seeing the chaos, dismounted and ran, not toward Gideon, but toward the cabin door. He kicked it open and grabbed Mylin by the arm. "You will learn your place," he snarled, dragging her toward the burning barn. Smoke choked her lungs. Heat seared her skin. She struggled, crying out for Gideon. But Blackwood's grip was iron. Then a shape burst through the fire. "Gideon!" He did not hesitate. He grabbed Blackwood, ripping him away from Mylin. The two men crashed into a stack of hay. Blackwood swung wildly. Gideon's fists hit harder. "You will not touch her!" Gideon roared, his voice filled with all the pain of his past, all the rage of seeing Mylin hurt, all the fury he had held inside for years. Blackwood staggered back, reaching for a pitchfork. Its sharp prongs gleamed in the flames. He lunged. Gideon dodged as the roof above them cracked with a loud groan. Smoke and sparks rained down. Blackwood stumbled, lost his footing, and fell backward onto a broken beam. Silence, then a wet gasp. Blackwood was still. The fire roared around him. Gideon! My Lynn screamed. The roof was coming down. Gideon grabbed her and ran, pulling her through the flames. A burning rafter crashed behind them as they stumbled out into the snow. They fell side by side, gasping for clean air. Snowflakes melted on their scorched clothes. They had survived. For days afterward, the cabin filled with smoke and silence. The world felt strange and too bright. Gideon treated my Lynn's wounds with gentle hands. She treated his burns with soft cloth. They mended each other quietly. Then the riders appeared on the ridge. A posse from town. My Lynn's breath caught, afraid they would drag Gideon away. But Gideon stood tall. "I'll tell the truth," he told her. In town, people stared and whispered. My Lynn was locked in a church room. Gideon was put behind bars for his own safety. The inquest was packed with townsfolk who once turned their backs on my Lynn. Mrs. Albright stood first, wagging her finger, calling my Lynn a fallen woman, a foreign temptress, a liar. My Lynn's vision wavered with humiliation. Then the judge called Gideon forward. He spoke clearly, boldly. "She ran because he claimed she was his property," Gideon said in a low, firm voice. "He tried to take her by force. He hit her. I saw the bruises." Gasps filled the room. "She fought for her life," he continued. "And I stood with her. She is no criminal. She is the bravest woman I have ever known." My Lynn's eyes filled with tears.